The stress and overwhelm that come with running a business is something that those who haven't owned a business simply can't understand. And tradie and service-based business owners are often stressed out to the max for months on end. Tune into today's podcast where we discuss how much the stress of business ownership affects you and how to deal with your stress in a positive way. Alrighty, g'day everyone. Tony Fraser-Jones here, the host of the Profitable Tradie podcast, and I'm here with my sidekick Phil Smith, the COO here at Profitable Tradie, and also the proud dad of Franco, number 3 in the family there, mate. How are you guys? How are you guys bearing up?
Oh, mate, good. It's easy, right?
Easy being a bloke, isn't it?
Well, with what we're talking about today, I mean, that has nothing to do with having more and more kids, does it?
No, it's not stressful at all.
Not stressful at all. It's easy.
Easy peasy.
I've never slept so much in my life.
Yeah. So 3 is a little different to 2, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a change. It's probably not as hard, I reckon, as going from 1 to 2. 1 to 2 was a bit more of a dynamic shift, but 2 to 3's, new again. How was 3 to 4, man?
3 to 4, interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah, you almost need to start having like layers of management in your house.
Right. Yeah.
So
put a structure in place.
Bit of structure.
Yeah, some KPIs.
Promote the older ones up the pecking
give
order.
Give them some responsibility. Hey, but that comes a pay rise, though. They're going to want more money.
Pay rise, like it's all pay. It's paying it forward, isn't it, with kids, isn't it?
Yeah, well,
but they're amazing. It's good. And,
it's an investment, mate.
Yeah, congratulations to you and Maya. That's amazing.
Yeah, cheers, man. Cheers. Yep. Very cool.
Good stuff. Anyway, what are we talking about today, buddy?
Mate, we are talking about stress and overwhelm. So, as I said, not something I'm at all familiar with the extra additions. But, mate, we're basically talking about how this is a really constant thing. So, how mental health challenges are massive for business owners and how the old toughen up and just get on with it. It's just not a great approach anymore. So, should be a good episode.
Yeah, it's going to be super important and kind of a bit real as well and a bit raw because it's not something that people necessarily like to talk about. And, let's be honest, the trade-based industries, service-based, construction businesses, it is pretty much still male-dominated. Yeah. It's great. There's a lot more women, in the trades now, which is amazing. And any smart business owner should be looking to employ some women because they're pretty smart.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they're pretty awesome. So definitely get some great tradespeople there.
That's right. But
and leaders, actually. We've got a lot of really awesome trades business owners in our program, which are women too. Yep. So we're getting more of a balance.
Yeah, big shout out to all the ladies there. Yeah. But the thing is, because it is a blokey sort of industry, this sort of stuff I don't think gets talked about a lot. The stress, the overwhelm, and it's really real and it has a massive impact.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And what happens is often you're under the pump for so long, it just becomes normal and you don't even realise that you're kind of being boiled alive. Yeah,
well, I think, everybody also, and this, men and women, I think the biggest thing here is that often when it first starts, you're in a position where you're like, oh, well, I had a bad day. And then a bad day is a bad couple of days. And then it's a average week. And it just kind of builds. And actually, probably there's stuff that you could do or people you could talk to or actions that you could take. But when it's first starting, you just think, oh, well, it's just a short period. I'll get through it. I'll just, when then kind of thinking, which I'm sure we'll touch on. And before you know it, it's actually become really like a Groundhog Day thing for a long period of time. And that's where it really starts weighing on you. Like I remember being described to me almost like picking up a full glass of water and holding it straight out in front of you. And, when you first do it, you think, oh, well, this is easy. Anyone can hold a glass of water. But try holding it right there for 2 months. You can't, right? Like your arm's dead by the end of the day. Yeah. And certainly if you could keep it there for 2 months, your arm would have basically fallen off. So it's that sustained tension, which is
and we're not designed to be under the pump all the time.
No, not at all.
And from I'll probably get into this now, but from a sort of an evolutionary perspective, we have that fight and flight response, and that was sort of designed to get us out of danger back in the caveman days to gap it from animals, and you kind of fight or flight. But we get into that situation for long periods at a time, and it does basically deplete your body and your mind and your soul.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Of all its energy, and really, it has some pretty major effects, and I think we need to get into that today and talk about that. Yeah. And I guess I got 2 things today that I think are massively important. One is to talk about this stuff, to know that it is real and that if you're feeling like this, it's okay and it's pretty normal. So that's number one. You're not super special. You are, but you're not. And also, what's some things we can do about this? Which is important. And I just want to say at the start of this episode, like mental health problems and challenges are very real. I've suffered from anxiety most of my adult life. I kind of like a high functioning, anxious person. So, and in our membership, we've worked with thousands of business owners, and this is a problem for a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely pretty widespread, and I think everybody will experience this to some level or another, at some stage or another, and it affects everybody very differently. But I think nobody can do it for a sustained period of time. Don't care who you are.
Yeah,
Superman. Still has to go back to his fortress of solitude sometimes.
That's right. And some of us are more resilient than others and can take more than others. That's fine. And sometimes you will be suffering from a mental illness, which you need, professional help for. And a lot of stuff we'll talk about today will help with that, but sometimes you need a bit more than that. So, if you're really struggling massively and it's all falling to bits, reach out and get some help from a professional as well.
Yeah, don't wait. Just get right in there.
Get into it, and maybe that's doctor or counsellor or psychologist or whatever it is. Maybe a bit of everything. But what we'll talk about today, I think, will be helpful as well. Yeah,
well, at least there's a starting point, and definitely just some practical stuff that you can use day to day. So, look, I'm sure you have a story to kick us off.
I do, and this is a true story. And we recently spoke with a couple, Heath and Janet, who were joining $1 Million Tradie program, and literally Heath was in tears, and this doesn't happen often. When we talk to people, we try not to make them cry. Occasionally it's necessary, but it doesn't happen often because I said, it's like a blokey industry. But the thing is, most blokes won't cry in front of other blokes, but actually a lot of blokes are crying on the inside.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's, really important to acknowledge. So they're really struggling on the inside, frustrated, angry, broken, whatever. And here's some of the things that Heath was talking about when he broke down. He was talking about how he was exhausted, but he couldn't sleep properly. He'd go to sleep, but he'd wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning and just couldn't go back to sleep. And he'd lie awake for hours and then start going back to sleep. Like 5:30, 6 o'clock, which is like a terrible time to go back to sleep because you know you have to get up. Then. And he was angry a lot of the time, and it was just small things would set him off. Even with the kids, which he said, sort of really cut him on the inside because he because it wasn't their fault, but he was just like, stretched too tight. And thinking about work all the time, even when he was not at work. So just couldn't put things down, and just not enjoying things in life anymore. Like things were just kind of grey. It was just like,
ho hum,
just stumbling along. And his words were like, I feel like I'm losing it, and it worries me about my ability to keep going. Like, can I actually keep going? And my response was, hey man, like, you're not alone here. There's a lot of people who feel like this to a different degree, and maybe if you're listening, you've had some of these things or maybe some different things. It's actually pretty normal, and a lot of business owners feel this, at least part of the time. But it doesn't have to be this way, and it's not supposed to be this way. I mean, you can't get out of running a business without some stress and some anxiety. That's part of it. Anything good involves some kind of stress. A little bit of stress is good, but it doesn't have to be, completely out of control, and so that you just feel like you're not coping. That's not right. If you're like that, it's time to do some stuff about it.
Well, it's when it turns chronic, right? Like when it's just unrelenting and it's constant and it's for a long period of time. That's when you got a problem. Like stress for short periods of time, we're designed for it. In fact, we perform better with it. If you put yourself in a little bit of stress, you're outside your comfort zone. It's like Ray Kroc said, when you're green, you're growing. So in this case, like it's good to be outside your comfort zone sometimes and feel out of your depth and maybe a bit stressed as a result. It can really actually level up your performance. But like humans are not designed to take that on long term. You think about running from that saber-toothed tiger. I mean, look, in this case, like that whole stress system, I mean, you either get away because you've never run faster in your life. Thank you, stress. You saved my life. I mean, or you get caught and you die. But either way, like it's a short-term thing. You're not running from that tiger for months without sleep. That's not a thing. And I think like one thing that's jumped out at me from Heath's story was, I think this might be something that people out there may relate to. A lot of the time you think, oh, well, I'm struggling to sleep might be a stress thing, and often they'll say, yeah, but I'm not having any trouble going to sleep, and I think that for me is quite a tell. Where, you're not actually having trouble going to sleep, that's fine. And that's because you're exhausted. So, head hits the hay and you're out, and that's fine. It's not even a drama, but it's that whole thing of then you wake up a couple hours later where basically your body broke down to the point where it had to sleep. It let you get just enough to survive and then woke you back up with all your problems.
Yeah, well, your brain woke you up.
Yeah, brain
with all
woke
your
you
problems.
up. Yeah. So I think that's the thing is for me, that's telltale. Like if you're going to sleep easily, even though you're stressed, but you're waking up, middle of the night and thinking about it rest of the night and you can't get back to sleep, it's probably time to start thinking about where you're at.
Yeah, and the example of running from the animal in the caveman days is really important because that's a sprint.
Yeah.
Now you're sprinting, and stress helps you sprint, but a sprint is designed for the short term. Now, for most business owners, their life is a series of sprints back to back with no rest, which is trying to run a marathon at sprint pace.
Yeah,
and that's why you get absolutely smashed.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just not the way we're designed to work.
That's it. You can't keep up with it. And I mean, look, if you do let stress get on top of you, there's a bunch of stuff which is not going to go the way you want, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think the first thing is that you find that your business and your life are just not fun.
Yeah.
And if there's no fun in it, you probably need to stand back and reassess.
Yeah.
So that's important. This is really important. You actually make bad decisions.
Yeah.
When you're under the pump and you're in that fight or flight response and stressed out, the limbic brain, which is like the animal brain, is what's working. And there's been studies done on this, like physiological studies that show when you're in that state, a lot of the energy is going to your big muscles and your brain doesn't actually work properly. Literally, you're a dumber version of yourself. And you make very short-term decisions, and sometimes you go back and look at them and you're like, what was I thinking?
Yeah, for sure.
And that perpetuates the cycle of stress because you make a bad decision which puts you under more stress later on.
Yeah, totally.
I think your family definitely suffers, so you just don't have the resources to be present with your kids or your partner. So that's important. Your health suffers. And, things like blood pressure, even, obesity, all that sort of stuff. Actually, a lot of that comes from stress because you make poor decisions about eating, eat on the fly, you don't exercise. If your body's under pressure all the time, it does some stuff to your heart, which is not cool.
Yeah.
And your business suffers as well because you get in that vicious cycle of just trying to keep the wolf from the door.
I like that you said the vicious cycle because actually when I'm looking at this, a lot of the points that we just spoke about, they actually all kind of lead to each other as well, right? Like, you're making the bad decisions because you're not really mentally at your best. Life isn't much fun at home or in business because you're just stressed out, and as a result, your family suffers because you're just completely in tension. I mean, we've all done it, right? You had a bad day, you came home and yelled at the kids. You didn't want to. It's not your normal personality, but it happened. You just snapped because there was just nothing left in the tank. Your health is suffering because of all of that, and then your business is suffering because of all that. But these are all actually very interlinked. It doesn't matter which one happens first. If you don't break this cycle, they tend to all happen. It's very hard to avoid all of them, not just one or two.
This is huge, and here's a little secret that people probably don't understand. A lot of relationship problems come from stress. I'm not as into my partner as I was. I'm not as attracted to them. Often you're just stressed.
Yeah.
And then your brain starts playing tricks with you.
Yeah, that's right.
That's often stress. You're just surviving.
Yeah.
So and that happens a lot. If you take the stress away, you're like, oh, actually
life's pretty good. There's a lot of good stuff here.
Yeah, like this is not so bad after all.
Yeah.
So the stress is the problem, often not the relationships.
That's right. And look, I want to just bring us back to one more thing there when we're talking about things that can go wrong, which is, saying business and life aren't much fun. I just want to make the point very clear. Business should be fun, right? Like it really should be fun. There's so much to enjoy. And so I think if you're not enjoying it, and I'm not saying it's fun all the time. Nothing's fun all the time.
And that's not realistic for it to be perfect.
And if it was perfect all the time, then it actually wouldn't be fun because it would just be boring.
That's right.
So, the ups and downs are actually part of what makes it fun because the trials are difficult, but when you overcome them, you get the satisfaction and the joy of, wow, look what I've just overcome. And so I think if you're not feeling that, for me, that's a warning sign, because this is one of the ones that tends to come first, is when it feels like Groundhog Day at work, then this is kind of like the start of the slippery slope for me.
Yeah.
Not for everybody, but for me, that's a big trigger.
And I think something else that you're sort of hinting at there is once you get in this cycle, the trouble for most of us in the cycle, we're in it and we can't see it. We can't see it from the outside, and so we seem to think that this is somehow normal and somehow the way it has to be, and somehow there's some badge of honor of just pushing on and just smashing it out.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, sometimes you have to grind it out. I mean, part of success is being conscientious and just grinding it out sometimes and doing the stuff other people won't do. But it shouldn't be like that all the time.
That's it.
And so today, what I'd love if you're listening and you're identifying with some of this is to actually say, well, yeah, actually, this probably is an issue for me and I probably should do something about this.
Yeah, totally.
That's a big part of what I hope you get from listening.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, we celebrate resilience in people, and it's definitely a good thing. You want to be as resilient as you can, but there is a point where anybody's resilience is worn down.
100%.
And it's time to look at breaking the cycle you're in. So, on the other hand, look, we can get this right and we can get some huge benefits. So, I mean, like, what could we look at there?
Yeah, I think if you're really aware of the stress and challenges and you start to plan for it and build yourself up for it, you can be much more resilient to stress and challenges, and you can definitely build your resilience. I think you provide much better leadership for your team and your family as well, because they're all stressed as well, so they need you to show them the way to deal with the stress they have.
100%.
And as a business owner, we've probably talked about this on several podcasts, is you are a leader, not only in your business, you're often a leader in your family, in your community. You're the kind of person who makes stuff happen. You're the entrepreneur, the go-to person.
Yeah.
And people look to you for leadership. So I think that's important.
100%.
You make better decisions.
Yeah.
And so instead of a vicious circle, things start to go right. And your business will prosper and thank you for it if you can get yourself in the right state, the right energy.
That's it.
And get out of that kind of cloudy, overwhelmed, anxious spot.
Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, a lot of good stuff to be gained. And I think, we want to build that resiliency as much as possible, and then put our actions in place for when we know we're running low.
100%. And
so,
I think that's what we need to dig into.
Yeah, so let's do it. So what can we do about this?
So the first thing is, recognize that's where you are, that's where you've landed. And hopefully if you identify with some of the things we've been sharing so far, you'll be like, look, that's where I'm at. And so if you have identified with that, I want you to take a step back and I need to do something here.
Yeah.
What sort of things you can do? Well, I guess we've talked about it, but this sort of is about mental health and well-being, and there's sort of a continuum for this. There's like one end where you're completely chilled out, you're so relaxed, you're kind of falling over.
Yep.
And at the other end, you're completely broken and you've had a breakdown and you need to basically get into hospital to reboot. And so if you're right up that acute end, you're going to need some specialised help for sure. But for most people, they're somewhere in the middle here, and it's kind of this grey, kind of boring place. It's not much fun.
And on one side you kind of have your resiliency, and then there's usually a tipping point where you tip over into the shields are down and you're in trouble.
That's done.
I just want to make a quick point here, Tony, just with something that you talked about, which was identifying when you're at that spot. And I think, as we've already kind of mentioned, it can be really, really hard to identify yourself. And I think something, guys, if you think that, anyone listening, honestly, if you're prone to this or that you've been in that spot before, something I think is really good is get yourself a partner, like an accountability partner. And look, with this, probably not your spouse, honestly, but someone that you trust who can call you out when they see it happening, and especially if they know you quite well and they know your triggers. Like, I don't know about you, Tony, but I find like you're super helpful for that for me, and I try to do the same for you. Where it's like, if I can see, that things are getting difficult, or I can see it's mounting up on you and you're not really yourself, like I'll tell you, hey bro, you need to look out for this because you're not being yourself right now. Well, you do the same, and that's super helpful, right?
That makes me laugh because I think you did this for me yesterday afternoon.
Yeah.
Because I was being a bit of a dick.
But that's the whole point, right? Is if you've got someone there who knows you well enough that they know your triggers, then they can see you slipping before you know you're slipping. And then you call each other out and you just kind of have each other's back, because it's really hard to see for the wood for the trees when you're lost in the forest.
100%. 100%. Yeah, I appreciated that yesterday, even if I was a little bit, a little bit testy at the time.
Well, mate, I appreciate it right back. That's the whole thing, right? Is like, if we watch each other's back on this, then we're a lot safer as a group.
100%.
Yeah.
So two things really influence your stress anxiety, overwhelm levels, whatever you want to call it, kind of put it all in the same box. One is the demands from the environment, which is basically the stuff you need to get through. You know, what do you have to get through? What's putting pressure on you? So that's one thing. And the second part is your ability to cope.
Yeah.
And that differs for different people. So, I mean, different
100%.
people are going to have different things they've got to get through, and we're not all the same in terms of our ability to cope. Some people are, you know, they're amazingly resilient, and some of us not quite so much. And that's all good. It's not a value judgment. It's just what it is. Some of us can run faster than others.
Yep.
Some of us have had different upbringings, whatever, learnt different, you know, ways to cope.
Totally.
So the demands from the environment, you know, that's how do we manage what we need to do?
Yeah.
And maybe we should dig into that. But what are some things that you think we could, you know, would be helpful for people here to look at?
Well, heaps. I think, like, for me, there's a bunch of stuff, but just quick note is that different stuff will work differently for different people,
100%.
right? So you got to figure out, of these types of things, which ones are more you. So I think from the environment, like, definitely a couple things, like identifying bottlenecks. Like, there'll be stresses on your time and stresses on what you're doing at work, and often it's not a how do I get through this, it's a who do I have to get to help me get through this. So Dan Sullivan with his who not how is pretty helpful here. You know, other things, there'll be stuff that you can just stop doing. You can delegate outcomes, you can rework your time as far as your own default calendar. You know, lots of stuff that you can do. You know, saying no, I think, is huge. Like, really, like, if you know that you're overwhelmed, there's lots going on as far as your environment, I guarantee that you can just say no a little bit more. Whereas I find that that's something that's really hard to do when you're under the pump, because you don't have the presence of mind to actually prioritize and figure out what to say no to. And you just want to be Superman and bash through this. So you actually start taking on more and you compound the problem.
Yeah, you basically get kind of crazy and go sort of into hypermania and try and do more and more and more, which is when you are feeling a bit like hyper and out of control in that way, and that's a good sign you're out of control as well.
Yeah.
Funny that.
Yeah,
If you're out of control, you're out of control. But, you know, you get the idea, right?
Totally.
Well, what we want to do is actually reduce the demands from the environment.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, the 80-20 rule is an amazing thing. And often, you know, 80% of the stuff you're doing is not adding that much value. There's the 20% that really counts. And so it's identifying and prioritizing the stuff that's really, really super important.
Yeah.
Like you said, a stop doing list. What are the things I can just stop doing? It might be stop doing the lawns at home.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
And it might be a temporary stop as well.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, like, just while I'm getting through this period, I might have to temporarily stop doing this. Like, honestly, think about the lawns. Man, if they become chest height, you can still cut them away one day, you know? But if that saves you enough time to just get some bloody chill time, like, man, it's actually worth it. Some stuff, like, you can just kind of put off.
Yep. And often it's about figuring out who you need to hire.
Yeah.
Often this is a capacity problem. So as business owners, we're really good at whipping ourselves, saying, oh, well, I should just work harder and I should get more productive. But there's a limit to that. And true productivity comes from actually getting other people to do stuff for you. So, you know, who do I need to hire to actually take some pressure off?
Yeah, totally.
And here's the thing. Even when you make the decision to hire and you start putting the ads out there, you feel better straight away because you've actually done something to take control of the situation.
That's it. You're taking action.
So you're taking action.
I think for me, though, the big thing is, like, when we look at the ability to cope stuff, like, what can I improve? Because obviously we look at reducing and prioritizing our time, but what also can we improve? Like, what can we make better for ourselves?
Yeah, well, I'd love to jump into that. It's just one thing I wanted to jump into first, just in terms of reducing the demands from the environment. Prioritization is the key here, and it's difficult to do when you're under the pump. So, and two things I want to talk about. You can prioritize the tasks that you've got to do. So, you know, you might prioritize pricing some work over operations because you know you need to get some stuff in the pipeline. So you can prioritize the whole task, but then you can look within the tasks as well. So let's think about pricing work. You know, when you're under the pump, sometimes you've got this whole list of jobs that you need to price, and you just start working them from the top to the bottom. Which is like, okay, how about we prioritize what we want to price? What's the top 20% of stuff we can price that's going to make the biggest difference? And the rest of it probably not going to matter so much. So prioritize the task, but then within the areas of the business, prioritize those sort of subtasks, which will free up a lot of time, and make sure you actually work on the stuff that really, really counts. I think that's huge, and I think you've touched on it I just want to reiterate this.
Yeah.
Say no, learn to say no, but it's not often no, it's often not now.
Yeah, there's a huge differentiation. Yeah.
So not now.
Yeah.
One of the biggest challenges we face with our members is they join us, they want to make a lot of changes to their business, and now they've got their business as usual to do, and they've got some business improvement projects to do as well. Well, sometimes you have to say not now for a couple of weeks to the business improvement project. That's fine.
Yeah.
Just to get through, but as long as it's not that forever.
Yeah.
So saying no is important, but often it's just not now to give yourself the breathing space as well.
And I think one last thing on that actually is when you think of the not now, sometimes the stuff to say not now to, maybe there's stuff you can't say not now to at work, but I find what a lot of guys do is, and a lot of girls, like they're at work, they're grinding away, they're working so hard all day long, and then they get home and it's kids sport, or it's gymnastics, or it's swimming, or it's dance recital, or it's music lessons or whatever, and you're running around dropping people off, picking them up. You get home, you got to cook dinner, you got to do this, you got to do that, and I'm like, man, honestly, like sometimes the easiest stuff to put on hold is the stuff outside of work even. And I don't want you to put on hold anything that's going to boost your energy and make you feel better, but if it's going to stress you out, like that PTA meeting, man, don't go. Like 1 or 2 weeks, don't go. Like it's okay to say no to some of that stuff. Or if you got, social engagements that you got to go to, I don't know, for me, like I'm running around to different people's houses. We got a lot of family, so we're visiting people, all weekend, every weekend. And sometimes you just say, hey man, we need to have a chill weekend this weekend. So I think, look for stuff that you might be able to put off or say no to outside of work as well.
Yeah, and it's often just for the short term, which is fine.
Yeah, exactly.
And it allows you to just get your head back above water. So
but it's harder to say no to, right? Because when you got to tell your kids, hey, we're not going to swimming today because dad is tapped out, you feel like you're letting them down. But it's like, man, they miss one swimming lesson. They won't even remember this. But if that's the thing that's going to just tip you over the edge, then like sometimes you actually have to look out for yourself, or otherwise you go to swimming, you come home and you're not your best dad or mum anyway.
This is huge because business owners are doers, and often the people who are doing stuff in the community as well. That's just the way we're wired. Like, we're we just do more than other people.
Well, dude, I look at you. You're on board of trustees at kids' school and stuff, and there's days when I've seen you have a really hard day, and then you got a board of trustees meeting, and I'm thinking,
what's he doing?
Don't go, man.
Yeah, that's right. So you got to be careful with that stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But back to what you were talking about. Like we've got the demands, got to reduce those, but our ability to cope. This is huge,
huge.
Because we can get better at that.
Yeah.
And I think there's two parts to this. The first part is, how do we build up our overall resilience to stress?
Yeah.
Which is like the long game.
Yeah.
And then the second part is, what do we do when we're completely tanked in the moment? What can we do to actually reset?
Yeah, totally.
So like the resilience part, I think is huge. Like, someone who's fit and has done a lot of training running can run for a lot longer than someone who hasn't.
Yeah.
So that's resilience. And there's a bunch of stuff that we can do. Then basically this is like common sense, healthy living, right?
Look after yourself 101.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think what I want to say here is a lot of the stuff, again, is not like, there's stuff that you might want to make permanent, but there's other stuff here where it's like, it may even just be a temporary change. And it's like, when I'm under the pump, I might do this differently than when I do it normally. So for example, like exercise, key, right? Absolutely key. Exercise is huge for, for feeling good and for, being your best self. The thing is, I go to the gym every day, but if I'm really, really stressed, what I do at the gym is completely different. Instead of running around the streets, through the concrete jungle, I might go out into the bush and actually try to run through a real jungle. Just change up that scenery and do it in a way that's actually more relaxing, more calming, and make it less about thrashing myself for the exercise and more about, getting outside and just getting my heart rate up a little bit, taking care of myself. It's a different type of thing.
100%. Yeah. So, some things that you can do to build your resilience that you actually include into your daily routine are exercise, stuff with some, some weight bearing stuff, but also some stuff that gets your heart going, and sweating is huge. Drinking water is massive. Often people are chronically dehydrated, which makes it difficult to concentrate.
And on that, I want to make sure that you understand water, not just drinking more of something. Like if you're drinking energy drinks or sugary drinks or anything like that, trying to stay hydrated, I mean, that's the opposite. It's an inflammatory thing. It's going to make you feel worse. So Drink lots of water, even if you don't normally.
Having a great routine in the morning is huge. So looking at your goals, planning your day out, having some positive affirmations, having a sleep routine is enormously important. So having a set bedtime, the more sleep you can get before midnight, the better. Like this is just scientific facts. So your wind down process for sleep, avoid food prior to going to bed, have a dark room, no blue lights after 8:30, like put the phone, the tablets, all that stuff away. That makes a huge difference. Do some quiet stuff. Don't thrash yourself trying to work till 9:30 at night, because some people can go to sleep with no troubles, but most people will struggle with that.
Mate, do you know my favourite thing to do if I'm stressed before I sleep is actually to play a board game with my wife before bed. Couple of reasons. It means I'm not on my phone. It means I'm not watching TV. It's something social that I can do with her. It's a connection thing for the two of us. And we have a laugh. Try playing a board game and not having a laugh. They're always kind of funny, even if it's because we're both getting a little competitive.
I need to say something there, because I know that you and I are very similar here. It's very relaxing.
I mean, not Monopoly, okay?
If
not
we're
Monopoly.
winning.
I'm banned from Monopoly altogether, guys. That's just a fact.
Right.
But hey, look, play a board game, have a bit of fun together, and sometimes that laugh and that giggle it's real good for you,
massive.
And you go to sleep just feeling $1,000,000.
Other things to be resilient is you look at your diet. If you're eating a lot of processed foods, fried foods, like it creates inflammation in the body, and that does stress you out. So
that's right.
Eating well is important, and getting out in the sunlight, that sort of stuff's really important. So if you can
into nature,
get into nature, bake some of that into your week is going to help hugely. And then when you're under the pump, when you really are stressed out, what are some things that you find help? Like you talked about walking in nature.
So actually, it's again been very scientifically studied that nature is huge for boosting all four of your happiness hormones. There's actually one study where after hugging a tree for 10 minutes, it actually is proven to boost serotonin, which that's crazy, right? But seriously, actually getting out and into nature has a really big effect. And for me, I find seawater is huge. Like if we live quite close to a beach, and if we get down there and get in the ocean, I just feel $1,000,000 afterwards. Whereas I might not prioritize that normally, but when I'm stressed, it's huge. Drink less alcohol, man. Honestly, generally, I mean, I love a good beer, but if I'm really stressed, just remember that the alcohol you're drinking is borrowing happiness from tomorrow. And so if you're already low on happiness, stop going into debt. I think that's huge. Limit caffeine, because then you start running on caffeine, and the problem with that is that the energy goes, and then you're lower than you started.
100%.
And honestly, the big thing for me, get out and just nurture your brain. So learn something.
I think one of the things I find huge here for me is learning. So if I'm really tapped out, what I need is a change of perspective, and I get that from often jumping on YouTube and listening to some motivational talks. Like a lot of you listening would have heard of Tony Robbins, for example. You watch a 10 or 15-minute clip of his, and it changes the way you feel, because it resets your parameters, like your expectations, which is amazing. Good music can be good. I find going for a run that makes me sweat is amazing for breaking funk. Walking is incredible. I often go for walks during the day. We have a river here near our office. Just walk along there for half an hour. It's amazing how the dust settles. Talking to someone for me is huge. My wife knows that I can get in a funk, and she makes me talk about stuff. And I can tell you, at the start, I really don't want to. But she persists, and it makes me, it gets me out of my own head. Which is huge. So that's like having someone on your team, and Phil does that for me as well here. But there's definitely stuff you can do, and you need to have a few go-to things. And I reckon what we've done a training on this for our members is basically create an emergency manual with 3 or 4 things written down that you have stuck beside your computer, or maybe in your wardrobe, where you see them, even in the van or the truck, where you see them and you're like, oh, those are the few things I can do if I feel funky.
100%. And I just want to make really clear, guys, if anyone here is struggling with any of this stuff, one of the biggest things I've found overall, hands down, is practicing gratitude. That has been an absolute game changer for me. awkward at the start, a little bit weird, but it's the consistency of practicing gratitude that really, I just find it rewires your entire brain. And if you really want a good deep dive into this, I think hands down the best book I've ever read on this topic is The Resilience Project by Hugh Van Cuylenburg. Yeah. If you haven't read that and you have any of these kinds of feelings, you need to read that book. And do it on Audible because it's narrated by him. And he tells his own stories really from the heart. And I just think that book will change your life. And if you do that practice of gratitude that he recommends, that's absolute game changer.
Killer thing. And we do that with our kids every night. What are you grateful for today? And funnily enough, last night, because I was feeling a bit funky, as you know, we weren't together last night, but that's fine. Bronwyn said to me, what are 3 things you're grateful for when we're lying in bed, going to sleep? And gratefulness, you cannot be, gratefulness is the antidote to stress. It's a different, it changes the emotional state.
100%.
And it changes your perspective. So that's a killer.
Yeah. And when you're doing this every day, it rewires your brain so that you start noticing those moments you're grateful for in the moment and experiencing them in the moment, which is something I actually never really tapped into until I read that book.
Here's the thing, right? Everyone who's listening to this is better off than 90% of people in the world already. I don't mean that our problems are insignificant, because everyone's problems are important to them. And we should acknowledge that. But we're all in the position where we've got businesses, we're doing stuff. Most of us are not figuring out what we're going to have to eat, how we're going to eat tonight.
Yeah.
And so we all have a lot to be really grateful for.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Well, should we land this plane?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So stress and overwhelm are huge issues for business owners in the trades and service-based businesses. And if you don't have a strategy to deal with the stress, it can literally eat your head off.
Yeah.
So important thing to do is to fit your own oxygen mask first and put things in place so you can turn up as your best self.
Hey, I hope you liked the video. Check out all the other videos in the channel and like and subscribe.